This is the Haulin Assets podcast, where we show you how to start and run your own trucking company. Ever wanted to go out on your own? Follow Chris as he goes through the highs and lows of running on his own authority. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to take 2 of episode 91 of the Haulin Assets podcast. I'm Craig. Over there, he's Chris.
Still here. Same guy. Can't get rid of me.
It's not that you're still here. It's you're here again. So this episode is coming out a little bit later today than it normally does because, I blame Chris. Chris jinxed it. Yesterday, this is not a joke. It's not a lie.
This is not a joke.
We recorded this episode yesterday, and Chris made a joke, or not a joke, just an observation about how great it's been that over 90 episodes, we only ever had to re-record maybe one, and it was really early on. Ha 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 ha. Thanks, Chris.
It is my fault. I'll take the blame.
Anyway, today we are going to be talking about annual planning and what you, Chris, are doing for annual planning for 2022 and kind of what you encourage others to do as well. Before we do, you had an intro topic, and I'm going to pretend not to know what that was because, we didn't already record this yesterday. Huh.
Yeah, but before we get to the intro topic, or not the my teaser, I guess you could say.
Your teaser, yeah.
I want to say, so we are going to be talking about goal planning today, and I want to lead off just by saying that I think goal planning and setting goals, it's not one of my favorite things in the world, but I think it's one of the things that's had the biggest impact on my success. And especially if you look at it from the stance of how much time I put into it versus the benefit gained from it, I think it's really the most beneficial thing you can do for a business.
So what you're saying is this is an important episode.
This is an important episode.
Okay.
Even though it may not be the most entertaining episode in the world, it is a very important episode.
That's true. Yesterday's episode was wildly entertaining. People it'll go down in history as the best episode of Haulin Assets ever recorded.
That doesn't launch.
That you'll never hear. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, well, good. Before you tackle this subject, then I will remind everybody, go to haulinassetsllc.com, go to Facebook, where I just shared a picture of me and Chris sporting our delightful new t-shirts, the Haulin Assets t-shirts, which are available for you to purchase.
Yeah, on Motor Carrier HQ and on the online store.
Yep, motorcarrierhq.com. You can go check out these fine t-shirts.
It's kind of a great way to support us a little bit.
Exactly.
We put some time and effort into these podcasts, and so yeah, it's a good way to
kick a few bucks
give us some
our way.
Love. Yeah.
Yeah. It's much appreciated. And besides that, you're advertising for us, which is always appreciated. Absolutely. When you wear that t-shirt around. So, all right, Chris. So what's your teaser? You've got a teaser for an upcoming episode, right?
Yeah, I've been doing my annual planning for all of my businesses, and we sat down over the last couple of weeks with iThrive Funding, and we also, as we do our annual planning, we look at some of the metrics for the business for the last year. And one of the metrics that really stuck out to me was our retention rate at iThrive. It's way better than it's ever been.
So iThrive being the factoring company. So what does a retention rate mean for a factoring company?
It just means that we don't have we're bringing in a lot of new clients and not losing a whole lot out the back door. And there's usually two ways that you lose clients in the factoring space. They either go to a competitor, which doesn't happen a lot to us because we do a really good job. And two, they go, guys just go out of business or stop operating. And so that's how you lose people. And that's where really the majority of our losses have come from in the past, is just guys going out of business or deciding that the owner-operator route's not the right thing for them. Well, this year it's been like almost non-existent. And that's really because, as we've talked over the last year or so, how good rates are and how, it's really been a really good year for the trucking industry, specifically owner operators. And, so the teaser is not the next episode, because the next episode is going to be a financials episode. But I think the episode after that, we're going to go into kind of the state of the economy, what I think is going to happen over the next year. And just kind of try to forecast a little bit. And I think that'll be good too, to kind of, as you're doing your annual planning over the next month or so, help, that'll help you make some decisions and decide what you want to do.
Right. Yeah, because it has been a very, very interesting year rates wise, and
Yep.
it's been awesome. Which, as you like to say, doesn't last forever. But
Yeah.
still,
And we'll
take
talk
advantage of the awesomeness. Right.
You want to take advantage of the opportunity, but yeah, also, we'll talk a lot about also, the kind of the reoccurring theme of, don't get too comfortable in this kind of a market.
Mm.
I have seen, I have a feeling, I've never got some hard statistics on this, but I can guarantee you that more people that start a business in this kind of environment 5 years down the road are more likely to go out of business than a guy who starts it when the economy is not going so well, because they've learned to operate on a more skinny
Right.
environment,
That shoestring budget.
the shoestring budget, and now you don't have to really. You should, but you don't have to, and so you just have to be really careful and keep that in mind that things ain't always going to be this good.
Yeah. Well, that'll be a topic for another day, as you said. And the topic for today is your annual planning. And by extension, everybody else's annual planning who's listening to this. It is something you should do, right? And we're going to talk about why. But Chris, why don't you set it up for me? Tell me about some of your philosophy, the theory behind annual planning, what this means, what it does for you, and why you like it so much, and why you love doing it.
One of the things I really like about annual planning is it kind of gets you excited for the future, because you're planning the growth of your business, you're planning on where you want it to be, and it really gets you excited about the future. That's really one of my favorite things about it. So as far as my philosophy goes, one of the things that I think is really important is you don't want to set too many goals. I think you should set 2 to 3 goals for your business. And when I say 2 to 3 goals, I mean these are like big, impactful things that are going to make a big positive or have a big positive impact on your business. And then behind that or underneath that, you're going to set some subtasks for each one of those goals. And this will start to make a little bit more sense as we get further along to it. But, typically just 2 to 3. And guess what?
What?
I'm going to break that rule today.
This I know because, having looked ahead at this point, it was pretty funny. So, okay, 2 to 3 goals is what you're going for with the sub goals and whatnot. Is there anything else you want to say about the philosophy behind this, or do you want to dive into the goals right away?
Let's go ahead and let me say one more thing real quick. So 2 to 3 goals, you're going to have subtasks under there, and you want to have it outlined, kind of the path to do that. You typically want to put dates with it, have it written down. It just, everything's a lot more concrete when it's written down, there's dates. And we'll talk a little bit about some other things that you can do at the end, like, holding yourself accountable, and we'll go from there. So let's jump into kind of our planning for Haulin Assets for 2022.
Okay, perfect. So starting with our rule-breaking amount of goals, what's the first one on your list then?
So Chet, Nate, and I sat down over the last couple of weeks and kind of talked through these goals. So the first one, and this is one that we actually really kind of had in the process already. We
not something you came up with cold,
right? It's not something we just came up recently, and the reason is because it's grow by 5 trucks. And you can't sit down with a dealership today and say, hey, I want 5 trucks next month. You had to make that decision like in July.
Right.
And so we kind of sat down in July and really started to talk about what we want to do as far as growth wise for Haulin Assets. And so 5 trucks is what
which is that's not insane. I mean, you guys know what you're capable of, but it's that is a huge goal, right? This is, you're running 4 trucks on the road right now. Is that right?
We're running 4, should have a 5th one. Like we've talked about the 5th one. We should have got that the middle of November. It's built and waiting for a computer chip.
Yeah.
And so, it could come any day now. It could be another month or 2. Who knows?
Well, let's assuming that you get that truck on the road this month, so it's still in 2021. That's doubling the number of trucks on the road in 1 calendar year.
Yeah, that's fairly aggressive growth.
Yeah, I'll say so. So why is it because the market is good enough right now you feel like you can do that? Like why this aggressive kind of growth?
That's part of it. Another part of it is, the fact that we brought on our partner, Nate, and we've got somebody that can dedicate fully to it, who he's got it's still going to be a tough go, but we've financially got resources. We've got Nate dedicated full time, and we feel like, that doubling that size, this will probably be the only time we ever double our size in this year. Other than, I guess we really technically did that. This more than doubled it this last year, but our growth, I don't think, is going to continue to be double this year and then, add 10 next year. That's not the plan. We probably more likely another 5 or so the coming year. But the reason we're doing 5 this year is it gets us up to that number, that 10 number of trucks. That 5 to 10 range is where it kind of starts to get easier to do what goal number 2 is going to be, which we'll get into in just a minute.
Don't get too excited, Craig.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I gotta wait, be patient.
But,
sorry, go on.
I kind of want to take a little bit of step back now, and let's talk back into the time of that July when we were trying to decide how we wanted to grow, because so before we even decided we wanted to purchase 5 trucks, we had to answer, how are we going to grow? In the trucking industry, there's typically 2 ways that trucking companies grow. They either buy trucks and add drivers, or they bring on owner operators. And so that was the first thing that we really had to decide is which method were we going to use?
Right. Employees versus contractors, kind of a split.
And there's pros and cons of both, but the biggest pro of bringing on owner operators is that you don't have to buy the equipment because they come with their own equipment. So, if money is in short supply for you and you don't have either the financial resources or the credit or whatever you need to do to buy your own trucks, owner operator is a great way to go because they bring the trucks. You don't have to spend quite as much money out the door, and it's typically a little easier.
Do you feel like that's also less risky for you, or is it just putting the risk in somebody else's hands and you have to deal with it regardless?
And that's another pro of it is it's less risky because I'm going to be kind of callous with this, but say 10 years or a year down the road, all of a sudden, you can't find the freight that you need to keep your 10 trucks busy and 5 of them are owner operators. It's pretty easy to get rid of the owner operators and it's a lot easier to do that than say, hey, I've got these 5 extra trucks that I can't make the payments on anymore. That gets ugly.
Right.
Getting rid of owner operators isn't fun either, but it's easier to do.
It's logistically easier at the very least.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. You're so callous, Chris. How dare you? Okay. What else do you need to do to make this goal happen, the 5 trucks in 2022?
So then once we decided for us that we wanted to buy the trucks and buy our own trucks, we had to make the decision, okay, we're going to continue purchasing new trucks or used trucks. And then, do we want to stick with the brand that we've been using? Same thing with trailers. And so we kind of answered all those questions. And so in our situation, we're buying new trucks, we're buying new trucks, and we're for the most part sticking with Freightliner. Freightliner is not going to be. We originally wanted to get 5 from Freightliner. They came back. All the manufacturers are doing this, and they're in July of this last year. They looked at all the orders everybody wanted, and I don't think anybody got as many trucks as they wanted. So what we're going to end up doing in our situation is we should get 4 from Freightliner, and then we were able to get another 2 commitment from Kenworth.
Hang on, Chris. That's 6. That's not 5. That's 6.
That's 6.
I just wanted to
look at that. Look at you go with your math skills.
I didn't even need a spreadsheet for that, Chris.
Math skills. That is 6. And so what the plan is with that is, everything's so volatile and unpredictable right now that we kind of are overshooting a little bit and hope that we get at least the 5. Worst case scenario, if we are able to get all 4 from Freightliner and 2 from Kenworth, worst case scenario, we either lose a deposit on one of them with Kenworth, or we get Kenworth to let us push off that 6th truck
for another few months.
Yeah, a few months into 2023.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Good. So any other aspects of this particular goal that you want to talk about?
So one of the other subtasks with that one, there's a couple more we'll just talk about real quick. The first one is just work on financing. Financing is an important part of that. Adding 5 trucks in the course of a year is a big deal. And so, you've got to start establishing some pretty good relationships with bankers early on, because you've got to have a banker that's on board with that level of growth, because when you're growing that aggressively, your financials for the previous year aren't necessarily going to justify you adding that many trucks. And so, they've got to feel comfortable that you've got a good business plan, you've got good management skills, and that you're going to be able to bring on those 5 trucks, continue to make all the payment on your existing trucks, the new trucks. And so, you're not every bank out there is going to finance that kind of a deal.
With that,
So you need to find the right partner to do that. And so that's something that you need to start working on as early as you can. So we've already started doing that. We've met with a handful of bankers, and we think we're going to be able to get there. But you don't think you're just going to walk into any bank and say, hey, I want to go from 5 trucks to 10 trucks.
Is this something you would theoretically be willing to work with a lot of different banks, or I should say several different banks, to finance what you're looking to do? Or is it like, hey, if our main partner isn't going to do it, we're not going to do it?
No, our ideal situation would be to finance all 5 trucks with one bank.
Mm-hmm.
There are things in the trucking industry, or a financing option that's called a guidance line, which is essentially they approve you for the financing for all 5 trucks and trailers in one shot. And it kind of operates almost like a line of credit. When you're ready to close on one of the trucks, that reduces the line that you have available. They basically create one term loan for that truck and trailer.
Mm-hmm.
And then so you're not going through the financing application process every time. You do it one time for all the trucks and trailers, and then you create a loan for each one as they come online. That makes sense.
Okay. All right. So that's financing. Now,
that's the ideal situation.
Right.
If that doesn't work, then you may have to end up going through 5 different banks to get 5 different trucks and trailers, and that becomes a headache.
Sure.
Still doable, but
you'd rather not.
You'd rather not. Rather avoid that if you can.
I guess my question was whether you would rather grow or keep it simple. Would you rather work with 3 banks to get financing, or would you rather put off the growth to keep your life headache free?
I think we would, in our situation, we would definitely try, even if it meant going to 5 different banks, we'd go to 5 different banks.
Okay. All right. The question occurred to me. I didn't think to ask that yesterday when we were recording this, but I do remember one other issue with buying 5 trucks is that despite what Tesla and Apple might want for us now, these trucks don't drive themselves.
No, they don't.
Right. So you got to staff these.
You got to staff these. And so that's another one of the things that we want to make sure as part of this growth model is that we've got good systems in place and we're doing things correctly so that we're able to attract and retain good drivers. And so one thing we actually just did, today is we're in the first week of December. We're giving a pretty good Christmas bonus to all of our drivers. And, just for a couple different reasons. One, we want them to feel like they're a valued member of our team.
Because they are.
They are. They absolutely are. None of this could happen without their efforts. And we really, truly appreciate that. And that's a token of our appreciation. And then, hopefully, it's been a good year for Haulin Assets. And this is a way for us to be able to kind of, spread the wealth a little bit and give everybody a little bit a piece of the pie.
Yeah, not bad.
And hopefully, drivers see that as a good token, a good gesture.
Sure.
I would say.
Yeah. Okay. So, so that's part. I guess there's not much more to it than that. You're going to have to hire new drivers, but you're going to have to retain them as well, like you're saying. Keep them happy.
Yep.
So that'll be part of the goal of getting 5 more trucks on the road. Which, frankly, when you say we need to hire 5 more drivers, that's a whole other goal in itself.
It is,
but in this, it's kind of a sub point.
It's a big
1.
chunk of that goal.
Yeah.
It's going to be, that's a critical piece of it.
So what is goal number 2 then?
So goal number 2, and I, is to establish some direct shipper relationships. We've kind of talked about doing this in the past. We've never really kind of defined a concrete plan for doing that. And we probably would have done it a little bit earlier, but the spot market has just been so good the last year and a half that we just haven't felt the need and the push to do that. With that being said, the economy goes up and down, and those direct relationships with shippers is one of the things that we can do to kind of hedge for when the economy goes down, because the spot market is super volatile. So when things go bad, that's the first thing that goes bad, and it typically goes really bad. And having some good direct relationships and contracts with shippers will help us, help navigate through some of those more difficult times when that comes.
Right. And like you said, this is something that you've talked about in the past. Establishing these direct relationships with the shippers, as I recall, just means we're cutting out the middleman of the broker who's helping find loads for you and arrange those contracts, right?
Yeah.
So, let me ask you this question, and this one occurred to me between the previous recording and this one. What sort of benefit, percentage-wise, do you see from cutting out that middleman? Like, how much do you stand to gain for each direct shipper relationship you have? Are we talking, versus the spot market rates that you're getting right now? Are you talking like a 5% increase, a 40% increase? Like what sort of revenue difference is there?
So that's a really good question. And I don't know that we necessarily see a huge increase in revenue versus what we're seeing now. What it does is it creates stability. And so we may get the same rates as we do, but they're kind of more guaranteed contracts. And so it's more reliable freight. And so even if the spot market goes down, those contract rates aren't going to go down. They're going to hold steady. And so that's really kind of more what we're shooting for with the direct shipper relationships, is just that stability, not necessarily the increase. And if we were having the same conversation 2 years ago, when the spot market wasn't doing so well, we would definitely be seeking an increase of where rates were at right. that point. But kind of because the rates are so good right now on the spot market that we don't really expect that.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I just thought I'd ask about that. So how do you go about doing this? Because as I understand it, you're the ultimate schmoozer. You're just doing nothing all day but shaking hands and kissing babies, right?
Yeah, something like that.
So yeah, how do you go about establishing these relationships, and how fast do you think you'll be able to do it?
That's a good question. And I've never been on that side of the business before, so I don't feel like I've got a lot of great experience in doing that. And so there's 2 steps. Well, kind of 2.5 steps in this goal that I want to talk about. And the first one, well, let me kind of clarify this first. Our intent with establishing this direct relationship with shippers is not to really execute on that part of the plan until the latter half of 2022. So this is probably something that we're really not going to start executing until the second half of next year.
Okay.
With that being said, we're going to start laying the groundwork and kind of pushing the ball down the field in the first half of the year, but that's really going to be mostly just a little bit of planning. So the first step in this is kind of developing the outline or the plan for how do we get from where we are today to essentially opening a brokerage. Now, the brokerage piece is something that's a step ahead of even the direct shippers, but it's all part of it. So the shipper is really what we're going to do this year, and the brokerage might be something we do this year, but maybe 2023. But our plan is to get from where we are to having a brokerage, and somewhere in the middle of that is developing those relationships with shippers.
So are you just looking way ahead into the future then? Are you talking about establishing a brokerage with a client of one, being you? Or is this, you're thinking big, like, hey, we're going to start a whole new company out of this?
Yeah, I think we'd start a whole new company out of it. And again, that's later on down the road.
Right.
It'd start with just Haulin Assets essentially, and using our trucks. And then, at some point, hopefully having enough relationships with shippers that we can kind of start to operate as a brokerage.
Oh, that'll be cool. Because as I understand it, you're super bored. You have nothing to do most days, and you need
I need
more
responsibilities. Yeah, more things to do.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Makes
sense. Okay, so you're going to be working the next 6 months or so on getting ready to make this happen. Then you'll make it happen in the latter half of the year. Yep. Anything else you want to say on this goal?
So then one piece that's going to be critical with this, and this kind of answers the question you asked just a couple minutes ago, is neither Nate nor I feel like we have the time or really even the skill set. We'd have to do too much on the job learning, and it wouldn't be worth it for us to be the one that goes out and, as you say, knock on doors, kiss babies, do that kind of thing.
Right.
So
by the way, if you knock on a door and then just ask somebody to kiss their baby, it's not going to go
frowned
well.
upon.
Yeah.
That's not
the approach
I've never
I would
tried
recommend.
that, but I'll take your word for it, Craig. So anyway, probably, pretty early on in the second half of 2022, we'll hire somebody that will do that for us.
Somebody, a salesperson for that. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So, boy, you're going to be hiring a lot of people for Haulin Assets.
We are.
I've got some competition to get myself my face on the side of the truck. There'll be all sorts of candidates.
It's not going to happen as long as you've got that man bun. I'll put that on.
Fair
right
enough.
Now.
Fair enough. Yeah, not a lot of man buns on trucks.
No, I don't. Yeah, I don't think too many truckers are going to think very highly of your man bun.
Hey, you know what? But
we're a diverse group. I mean, we're understanding, and we'll turn a blind eye to your fashion faux pas.
Chris, what's goal number 3? Let's move on.
We're not going to goal number 3. We're not done, because I've got one on here that's kind of part of goal number 1 and kind of part of goal number 2. Okay. So we haven't talked about it yet.
What's that?
It's we want to have a yard truck, or essentially an extra truck by the end of 2022. So if we end up getting that 6th truck next year, it may just kind of really, for the most part, be replacing
an older truck
that we still keep, but just use in case of, break glass in case of emergency type thing.
Right.
So yeah, if another truck's down or something's going on and we need to haul a load quickly and don't have a truck for it, we'll have that spare truck that we can use for that kind of a thing.
Right. As long as I'm not out joyriding it.
As long as you're not taking the kids to school on this truck.
Right. Okay, cool. So a yard truck. And how does that feed into the direct shipper relationships goal?
Because I think that's kind of important to have, because when you have a direct relationship with a shipper, you don't want to not be able to follow through on your commitment.
Right.
And so if we've got a spare truck that Nate or I could jump into if something happens or something comes up, either another truck breaks down and all of a sudden we're down a truck and can't haul a load that we'd already committed to, we've got a way to do that.
So if I understand what you're saying, having this direct relationship with the shipper, it's great for you because it provides more stability, et cetera, all the things you said, but it also probably gives you less room for excuses and dropping balls and all that stuff. So you've got to have backup plans.
You want to be able to perform.
Yeah.
You want to be able to stick to your end of the bargain, or they're not going to stick with you.
Right. Well, there you go. Okay. All right. Chris, are we ready for number 3? Goal number 3.
We can move on to number 3 now. Okay. And this is something that you've heard me talk a little bit about in other podcasts, and it's something that I've really had to focus a lot on some of my other businesses. And now Haulin Assets is kind of getting to the size where it's becoming more important. And that's improved scalability.
Improve scalability. And ladies and gentlemen, he said that without a whiteboard in front of him.
It's scalability.
No,
that's
not
like
that.
5 syllables. That's pushing the limits for me.
All I meant was that it's so corporate speak. I feel like I'm in a boardroom and somebody's they're writing down the goals on the whiteboard behind them. And it's improve scalability is just a disgusting turn of phrase for you, Chris.
It is, yeah.
But what does it mean?
It basically means, as you get older, as you grow any business, you want, for instance, in a truck, you want to add one truck and, your whole process to kind of increase at the same speed and same level as it was before. So you're not adding complexity to the situation. Right. And because right now we've got some inefficiencies in, for instance, our load tracking systems, because we're doing a lot. Guess what I'm using to do most of this?
My favorite solution to all problems.
Yeah. Spreadsheets.
Yeah, sure.
So, and spreadsheets aren't the best way to do that. And so,
or anything else for that matter, Chris.
Yeah. As we add more trucks, we're kind of on this exponential curve where things are getting exponentially more complicated. Mm-hmm. Instead of that level of complexity being linear as you're adding trucks, it's exponential and becoming significantly more complicated. It's almost like we add one truck, but our level of complexity increases by 2. instead of increasing by 1.
Right.
And so the scalability just makes it so that that level of complexity, basically is at the same pace as the number of trucks that you're adding.
So I
Does
don't
that
think
make sense?
I think so, but I was just going to ask you for a little more clarification. I don't think we need to go into the real nitty gritty of what do you call it? A management system?
Transportation
management
system.
management
TMS
system.
is often what they're called.
So yeah, we don't need to go into every little detail of that. That might be a good episode later. But when we're talking about that, what are give me one concrete thing that is not scalable with spreadsheets that you might be able to do with a TMS.
Well, one of the things that we're putting way too much time and effort in is payroll.
Okay.
So we track the mileage that drivers make in one system. We put it on a spreadsheet. And then we kind of track their per diem and a few other things. Then we've got to put it into a payroll system that makes the payroll. And it's very clunky, cumbersome.
A lot of steps.
And and there's, each one of those steps introduces a room for error, and it just, and payroll especially is just something you don't want to make errors on.
Right.
And so then to avoid errors, you're double, triple checking everything, and it just becomes incredibly time consuming.
And so with the TMS, what you're saying is it removes a lot of those steps where you're able to input the numbers and not go through 3 more steps. It just spits out the correct.
It either
check.
removes steps or it automates steps, and so it just makes everything more smooth, and so it just works better. And
okay, makes sense. Okay, so
it's more scalable.
Improve scalability. We'll see how often I can say that without shriveling up and dying. No. Chris, I spent 10 years working in giant corporations, and
You're done?
I had I don't mind giant corporations. It's just hey, for a lot of reasons it's all fine, but boy, some of those meetings with the improved scalability and other corporate speak. Oh, I'm getting traumatic flashbacks.
I'm not a big fan of meetings.
All right, so we've got 3 goals now that you've mentioned, and you said that we only want to do 2 to 3 annual goals. So we're done for today, right, Chris? Right?
Well, this is where I break my rule. I'm allowed to do that, right? If I make the rule, I can break it.
Yeah, it's sure. Yeah, that's how it works. Yeah.
All right. So there is a 4th rule, but I want to caveat this 4th rule. This 4th rule is not something that really takes time, in the sense that it's not something I'm going to have to carve out a chunk of my day to do.
Okay.
So it'll take time to make it happen, but it's not time consuming. It's not taking man hours.
Right. It's not energy intensive.
It's not energy intensive,
even if it takes time to get through.
And we've already talked about this in a podcast or 2 ago to a certain extent. So what it really boils down to is we want to improve our financial strength. And this is for 2 reasons. One, it kind of sets us up better for, future growth. Specifically, if we improve our financial strength, banks will look at our balance sheet and they'll see a strong balance sheet. It'll get easier to get loans, and then also that's going to make it easier for us to weather storms, which obviously is important too.
Right. So either way, whether things are going great or you run into a rough patch, having this financial stability will be a good idea. So what does it mean exactly to improve the financial strength of the company?
And so this is just really kind of the savings piece. And we talked a little bit about this, how our goal is to save $15,000 in operating capital per truck. So, if we've got 5 trucks, that's $75,000. And that's kind of the floor of our checking account during any given month. So we don't want our checking account to ever drop below that $75,000.
Right.
And you've got that for, operating emergencies, like if an engine needs to be replaced, or maybe not an engine, but like a bigger repair expense, like a turbo, things like that. And so, when those unexpected expenses come up, you've got that operating capital to pay it. And
yeah. Like you said, we kind of talked about this. I think it was the last one was a financials episode, so it might have been even the one right before that. People can go check out where we talked about that savings and the financial strength.
So that's part 1 of it. Part 2 of it was to also have, and that's our operating capital. So that's like money that's readily accessible. And then the second is to have a savings account where we set aside 10% of our total debt. So once we have our 5th truck, we're going to have about $750,000 in debt. So 10% of that, $75,000. So we want to have that $75,000 set aside in savings.
And so that's separate from the 75,000 you were talking about with like in checking and operating capital, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Correct.
So so you'll be sitting on a good chunk of emergency funds then.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. And you mentioned yesterday that this is going to tie in. Well, no, actually, hang on. Before I get to any of that, what about paying down that debt? You want to have this extra in case, but are you going to be using any extra capital to pay down your debt, or do you just do minimum monthly payments and call it good from there?
That's a really good question. And so there's some advantages of that, of paying down debt. And one of them is, it's kind of like, if you've ever bought a house before, they look at your debt to equity ratio, right? If you've got $100,000 in equity and $75,000 in debt, that's looking a lot better than $100,000 in debt and $100,000 in equity.
Right.
And so the more equity you've got, the better off you're going to be. So paying down that debt faster increases your equity more quickly, which strengthens your balance sheet, which banks like to see and makes it easier to get loans and stuff in the future. So that's a good question. But and the answer to it, the short answer is yes, but it's kind of tied into another piece of this savings thing this increasing our financial strength that we've been talking about. And so one of the things that Nate and Chet and I talked about was, well, how do we make sure that we've met that metric? Do we want to make sure we've met that metric before we add the next truck, or do we want to add the next truck and then make sure we hit it before we add the next truck? And what it started getting really complicated. And so the easy way that we found to do that is we said, hey, you know what? We'll just do this. Until those two metrics are met, we won't take any distributions from the company. So we won't take any of the profit out of the company for the owners until those two metrics are met. And
that makes sense.
Yeah. And so like in this situation, and when I say that, Nate and I are taking a little bit of a wage, especially Nate. He's taken, because this is his sole job, he's taken a wage out of it. So that's apart from that. This is like the profits.
Right. Yeah. The salaries are built into the expenses of the company.
Correct.
Whereas a distribution is separate. It's pulling it out from those profits.
So we won't take a distribution unless those two metrics are met. And then to add on to that and to answer your question, we've decided that once they're met and we decide to take a distribution, I usually, with all my other businesses, look at everything once a quarter. So once a quarter, we'll look at how much money we made and decide if we want to take a distribution. And we'll do the same thing with Haulin Assets. And let's say after a quarter, there's $10,000 in profits that we want to distribute. Well, we're only going to distribute 5,000 of it. And then the other 5,000 will go towards paying down debt.
Oh, okay. All right. So, right. So, yeah, you may take some of the profit out of the company, but every dollar you do, there's a dollar that goes toward the debt.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
And this is one of the things where I see guys make some serious mistakes with their business. We talked about salary. You should set your salary for your business as a very reasonable, conservative salary. And then don't use your business as a piggy bank. Don't go and take out those extra distributions because some bill came up or something happened. Don't use it as your piggy bank. Only take out those distributions on deliberately, kind of like what I do. Once a quarter, we'll look at it, and the profit that's left over, we'll distribute some of that. Don't just be taking money out without a good plan.
Okay. Yeah. Very good. So we've got now 4 annual goals. And is there anything else that you want to say about these before we wrap it up? Or even about going back to the philosophy of the annual goals? Anything else you want to talk about before we get to our impact tip?
Not really. Let's do the impact tip.
All right. The impact tip, Chris, because I remember this from yesterday, is it's a Nike tip.
It's a Nike tip.
Okay. What's the Nike tip?
Just do it. I don't think they use that slogan anymore, but we're old enough that that's what we grew up with.
That's
the Just
right.
Do It slogan.
Yeah, that's right. Children of the 80s. Yeah. What year were you born, Chris?
78.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're very old. That's fine. That's fine.
Thanks, Greg. I appreciate it. Yeah, so annual planning is not the most fun thing in the world to do. It's not the most glamorous part of your business, but as I said early on, I think it's one of the most impactful things, if not the most impactful thing you can do for your business. For the amount of time you put into it versus what you gain from it, I don't think there's anything better you can do. And it's critical to a successful business.
Yeah. And I like this impact tip because it goes way beyond just annual planning. Obviously, that's what we're talking about today. And it may not be something that you want to carve, hours out of your week or month in December for. But it is really important. And I like this impact tip because with so many tasks like this, starting it is the hardest part. Yep. And once you start it, you discover, oh, you know what? This isn't as tough as I thought. It didn't take as long as I thought. It was easier than I thought, whatever. I mean, you talk about that with raking your leaves in the fall, whatever. There are tasks where it's like, I'd really rather just do something more interesting or watch TV or something. But once you get started, like, oh, you know what? This feels pretty good. I like that I accomplished raking my leaves, whatever the task is.
Yeah, it's human nature to kind of avoid doing the things you don't really love. And the actual mechanics of annual planning I don't really love, but it's always good to find, okay, what's the silver lining in this that I really like? And like I mentioned at the beginning, one of the things I really like is it gets you excited about the future because you see where you want to be, you can vision it, and you set a plan to get you there, and that's exciting. So yeah. I would just say, just do it, make it a priority, and make it happen.
Absolutely. Well, here, Chris. All right. So I would just say, here to everything. I love this idea of annual planning. I'm a small business owner myself, and so you've kind of lit a fire under me that I need to be doing this for the next couple of weeks before the year is out. So I think we should adjourn so I can go work on my 2022 plan.
Sounds like a good plan. I'm not going to leave here until I see you making concrete steps towards doing that.
So I will just remind everybody that it is December, and with Christmas coming up and holiday season, things get a little bit weird. We will have one more episode this year, and it'll be looking at November's finances, but we're not exactly sure when we're going to record and release that. So we've been on a 2-week schedule lately, and just if there's not an episode in your feed in 2 weeks exactly, don't panic. It's coming. Yeah, so we'll be there.
I think we'll make the 2 weeks, but just in case.
Yeah, just in case. Anyway, but everybody enjoy your holiday season. Thank you so much for listening. So thank you for watching on YouTube. If you do that, I hope you do, because it's always fun to see Chris roll his eyes at my stupid jokes and all that stuff. So Chris, thanks for coming in. I will see you next time.
See you next time.